Previously on World Gone Mad. 3 months after the fall of Chris and the Vipers. Lincoln's group have moved away from the base. They are staying at a ranch in order to get as far away from danger as possible. But now that Lincoln has found out that he has a chance to be a father once again, how will it change him as a leader? Dave decided to let Lincoln live his life and he's decided to go his own way. But how will he be now that he's got his revenge and he's made peace with Lincoln? Miles is a sergeant for the Queen, but how will he fight back against Lincoln now that he's convinced the Queen that he's still out there? And now, with Lindsay knowing who Lincoln is, how will she face the outlaw? Episode 1: Death Among the Ruins. We open with Lindsay as she's waking up for the day and she splashes water on her face. She then is putting a blue ring on her finger. We then see her looking at a map of all 7 outposts she has. We then see her grab her knife and she gets ready for the day. As she's ready to walk out, she looks over at all of her heads on her shelf and she says to them, I'm gonna need all the luck I can get today. And then Miles radios her and says, ready to go in 10. I repeat, ready to go in 10. Lindsay picks up her walkie and says, good, let's get this done. We see a wide shot of the forest as we hear the wind blowing and the snow falling. We hear screams from far, and we see a huge group of the Vipers taking out an entire camp. And as we see the Vipers killing all these people, we focus on the forest as we see blood splash on one of the trees. As we see all of the death among the ruins. Two of the men are trying to get up. One of the men's left ear is just hanging off his head, and he's trying to keep the blood from pouring out as he's trying to keep his ear on his head. But then they both get stabbed in the head with a sword, as we see the Vipers going around and taking everything they can from this camp. We see it zoom up to the top of the hill, and we have Lindsay and a new character named Kate who are watching this from high, and they are looking down at a massacre. Lindsay says to Cade, "It's just breathtaking, isn't it?" Cade says, "I absolutely agree, my queen. This is what I call a damn good victory." Lindsay smiles and says, "Victory? With each victory of light is the dark that wins." As we see both of them ride off, as we see the sun is starting to rise. We see the Vipers walking through the camp and putting down some of the ones suffering, and then we see one of the people isn't dead and is running away into the woods. The main Viper says, "Son of a bitch, Sergeant Miles!" As we see Miles takes off his helmet and says, "I'll get him." As Miles and a few other Vipers chase after one of the stragglers. This man named Austin is running as fast as he can. He falls on some ice and hurts his leg, and then he quickly tries to get back up, and he hears the men chasing after him and following his tracks. He keeps running through, and his leg is now in pain from the fall, and he's barely running, and he's now limping and is trying to run as fast as he can. But then a Viper knocks him on the ground with his gun. The Viper yells, "I got him!" Miles and about 20 other Vipers walk up to him, and Miles puts his sword away and says, "Good job, Sergeant Smith. I'll take it from here." Miles kneels down and says, "You travel fast, son. Your people tried to overthrow us, so they had to die." The man looks scared, but he asks, You killed everyone?" Miles doesn't really answer the question, and he says, "Your people made their choice. But you know what? You make a really good point." Miles goes up to a Viper and asks, "Give me your gun." And the Viper hands it over, and Miles puts his two swords on the ground and then hands the pistol over to this guy on the ground, and Miles says, "Kill me." The man looks scared and confused, and Miles says, "I am always a fair man, and you ask for your chance, and your wish shall be granted." And Miles smiles as the guy looks scared and is shaking like crazy, and Miles puts his hands up and says, "Go on. I'm right here." And as the man slowly raises the gun and pulls the trigger, and with all the shaking, in slow motion, the bullet just narrowly misses Miles's head. Back to normal speed, the gun is empty. Miles kicks the man in the leg that he hurt and trips him to the ground. And this showing Miles is insanely trained. Then Miles takes one of his swords back off of the ground and points it to the guy's throat and says, "Okay, you lost and I won fair and square, sir. But hey, can't say I didn't give you your shot." Austin says, Are you one of them?" And Miles says, "You're gonna have to be a little bit more specific than that, my friend." Austin says, "The Outlaws." Miles looks pissed and holds the blade to his throat and asks, "Yeah? And what do you know about them?" Austin says, "Nothing. Aside from the fact that they travel these roads, and the word around these parts is that it's the best to avoid them." Miles puts his sword back and says, "Well, alright, gentlemen, take this one back. I think this guy has some very critical information, and you're gonna tell us everything we need to know about the Outlaws." And the guy looks scared as the men take him and put a bag on his head and put him in the back of the wagon. We see them riding into the city. Miles takes Austin out of the wagon, and Austin has a bag on his head, and his hands are tied. They enter a big building. They are walking down a long hallway, and we see Austin is panicking, and one of the Vipers says, "God damn, can you just calm down a little bit, Jesus?" And we see Austin asking, Where are you taking me?" Miles says, "Shut up, we're almost there." Miles walks up a big flight of stairs and walks up to the Queen's throne room, and Austin and Miles walk in, and Miles forces Austin to his knees and forces him to kneel in front of Lindsay as we see her get up from her throne. Lindsay walks up to him and says, "Great job, Sergeant Miles. Cleaning up the camp. How did the rest of that go?" Miles says, "Went great, according to plan." Lindsay says, "Well, I'm glad to hear that. How was the trip back? We're getting into another winter. Me and Cade barely made it back ourselves, so I sure hope the roads were good to you all." Miles says, "Thank you, my queen, and yes, they were fine." Lindsay has a smile on her face and says, "That's great to hear." And then, the smile starts to leave her as she asks, "And who may our new guest be?" Miles says, "I would like to speak to you alone if that's possible." Lindsay says, "Very well. Can someone take him into cell number 45 until I'm ready to see him?" Miles hands Austin over to another Viper, and we see the Vipers clear the throne room, and once it's just Lindsay and Miles in the room, Miles says, Look, I can explain. Look, I know I had a job to do, and I did it, okay? I did everything you asked me to do, but just..." Lindsay stops him and says, "You've been doing this job for a long time, and you know the rules. What do I always say? Never take a prisoner from a slaughter. That simple." Miles says, No. Look, when we were out there, he mentioned something. Something I thought you should know about. Lindsay says, "Well, I'm right here. So talk." Miles says, "He talked about a group named the Outlaws. He said that they travel around here a lot, and if they do, you know for damn sure that they know about this place." Lindsay says, "Okay, fine. I'll settle this. You come back to me at the end of the day tomorrow with information. You're in charge of this search to find out who the Outlaws are. And if you get into trouble, or if my people get hurt, you're gonna pay the price. You understand me?" Miles looks confident and says, "I won't let you down." Later on, we see Miles walk into an old bar outside of the city. As he walks in, we see written on the sign outside, "Tom's Sports Bar," confirming the Vipers are set up in Washington, D.C. Miles walks into the bar and the bartender says, "Good day, sir. Usual?" Miles says, "Yes, sir. Scotch on the rocks, Bill." He sits down and is waiting for his drink. Bill asks, "So, how was the trip?" Miles says, "Kind of overwhelming. I mean, don't get me wrong, the job was done. However, it came at a price." Bill says, "Oh yeah? What kind of price?" Bill gives him the drink and Miles thanks him and says, "Well, we killed everyone in the settlement, as the Queen instructed. But I had one. He was down on the ground. I was gonna kill him, like I did everyone else." Bill says, "You didn't kill him." Miles asks, "How did you know?" Bill says, "I know you too well. You got that look of guilt on your face, like you did something you weren't sure about." Miles says, "Well, it's my mission. I've got a deadline to find out why this guy is so afraid of a group called the Outlaws. Bill says, who the hell are the Outlaws? Miles takes a sip of his drink and says, well, it's my job to find out what. It's my responsibility to protect this place from whatever these people are. As we see, Sergeant Stephen walks into the bar. Bill says, good day, Sergeant Miles. What can I get for you? Stephen says, get me a Bud Light, good sir. Bill says, you got it. Stephen then sits next to Miles and says, welcome back, brother. It looks like this trip kicked your ass. Miles says, yeah, just a little. Stephen says thanks to Bill for the drink, and then Miles pays for him. Here, it's on me. Stephen says, man, no, I hate when people do that. Miles says, no, it's on me. Stephen says, well, thanks, you fucking dick. Miles laughs and Stephen says, I had a little chat with your inmate earlier. Fucking quiet, motherfucker. Miles says, yeah, I gotta find out specifics about this group called the Outlaws by the end of the day tomorrow. Stephen says, fuck, she ain't giving you too much time, is she? Miles says, no, she wants answers. Frankly, so do I. Stephen takes a sip and says, well, let's get those answers, Sergeant. As we see Miles and Stephen walk out and walk to the underground cells. Miles, Stephen, and two other Vipers go down into the underground cells where they keep their prisoners. And they open up the cell door and we see Austin look scared and he is sitting in the corner begging them not to kill him. And Miles says, welcome to the Hill House. Apologies, it's not the warming welcome that our guests usually get, but we got a whole lot of shit to talk about. So let's begin. Miles takes his sword out and shows it to Austin as he is still panicking. Miles says, now take a moment. Look how sharp it is. I could easily kill your sorry ass. But if I get the information I need, none of this will matter. And for your case, well, I'd hope it wouldn't mean a damn thing. Now, where are the Outlaws? Austin says, I don't know, I swear. Miles says, wrong answer! And he takes out one of his swords and says, all right, now the clock is ticking. You tell me where they are, or your people's blood will not be the only thing that's on my blade today. You catch my drift? Austin says, okay. They travel by Jefferson Davis around that location, but they move a lot from there. Miles says, how many of them travel? Austin says, the most I've seen in groups is 10 to 20. Miles looks back at Stephen and Stephen says, we take two teams out. One on the Jefferson and the other goes 10 miles out. Miles says, why 10 miles out? Stephen says, so if he's lying, we got backup. Miles says to Stephen, look, this isn't your problem to deal with. You've got better things to do. Stephen says, no way am I letting you do this alone. It's none of us or it's all of us. Miles says, all right, but I'm gonna go look myself. We don't want to be risking our lives over this kind of thing. Stephen says, you really shouldn't go out there on your own. Remember what happened last time? Miles says, I'll be fine, brother. As we see him walk out of the cell and he rides out of the city. "19 days later. We open on a cold winter night. Miles is training on top of a hill. He then sees about 10 deadheads coming up the hill, and he stops and says, "You fuckers can't leave me be for 2 minutes, huh?" The deadheads are coming up the hill, but then they slip on some ice and fall back down the hill. Miles says, "This Canadian-type bullshit weather makes my job a lot easier." He then goes down the hill. He then takes out his 2 swords and starts killing all of the deadheads. Once he's done, he's walking through the dead bodies and he's looking through their pockets trying to find anything of use. And then he finds a compass in one of the deadheads' pockets. He then rolls his eyes and says, "Really? That's all you fucking jackoffs had?" But he then takes it anyway, and he then goes back up the hill and keeps training. But then, we see 4 men are walking through the dead corpses at the bottom of the hill. All these men surround Miles, and 3 have knives, and one of these guys has a gun, and they surround Miles. Miles, meanwhile, just keeps training like there's nothing going on, and says, "Can I help you?" The lead guy with the gun says, "We've seen you walking these roads the past few days. Is there something or someone you're looking for?" Miles says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm forgetting the part where that concerns you." The man says, "Sir, I'm afraid you're gonna have to leave." Miles stops training and looks at him and says, "You really want to do this?" The man says, "Our leader has told us. Anyone that comes through these parts that isn't a resident of our settlement will be killed on sight. That is my way of giving you a friendly warning." Miles laughs and says, "Okay. Well, who's your leader? They sound like an on-edge son of a bitch." The man says, "Lincoln West. And I'm sorry to tell you, son, but this is your road's end." Miles says, Huh. Yeah, I guess it is." Then out of nowhere, Miles kicks this man in the leg and the man goes down. The 3 men attack him, but he picks up his sword and slices all 3 of their heads off. And as we see it in slow motion, the blood from the guys' heads splashes all over the snow and it lands in slow motion. Now the lead guy looks scared as he sees all 3 of his men got killed. Miles then takes out a pistol and shoots the man in the leg. The man then falls to his knees and begs him not to kill him. Miles says, "Now that was just a warning. Tell me where Mr. West is, or I will be popping rounds until I run out. And I'll leave your sorry ass out here to die." The man says, He set up at the ranch. It's about 10-15 miles away from here. That's where you'll find him. Okay? Please, I don't want to die, okay? Please. But there's a lot of people out there. We've got guns, good fighters, and a leader that won't stop until you're dead. Miles looks at him with a look of no mercy and says, "So do we." And he shoots and kills the last soldier. As we see, the sun is starting to rise. Back at the ranch, we see a few deadheads at the fence, and they all get stabbed by Kezia. Blake walks up to her and says, "Hey, I had rounds today." Kezia wipes the blood off her knife and says, "Well, you're not doing a very good job." Blake says, "Yeah, doing Sam's job." Kezia asks, "He didn't show up for a shift today?" Blake says, "No, I can't find him anywhere. You seen him? Kezia says, no, not since yesterday. Blake says, yeah, something doesn't feel right. Kezia says, there's been a lot of weird shit going on lately. Hey, aren't Lincoln's group supposed to be back by now? Blake pulls out his walkie and says, yeah, good point. Lincoln, this is Blake. You copy? Outside of the walls. Lincoln, Tom, Sydney are all back to back. The deadheads are coming from each direction, and they start killing one after another, and after another, and after a while, they finally kill a bunch of the dead. Afterwards, they look tired, and Lincoln says, home's just 5 more miles. Tom says, well, that's 5 more stale warheads I'll be eating. Lincoln says, oh my god, how many of those did you take back there? Tom says, oh, there was at least 20 to 30 back in that pantry. It's the only thing worth a shit in that house back there, though, I'll tell you that. Lincoln says, well, we gotta find some food. Some real food. Not this shit. Tom hands a warhead to Lincoln, and Lincoln says, oh my god, no, man, I'm not doing that. Tom says, oh, come on. We still have a few miles to go. Come on. Lincoln opens up the wrapper and says, oh, fuck's sakes. Tom starts laughing, and Lincoln says, holy fuck. How can you keep eating this? You've been eating this every mile? Fuck, that's sour. Tom says, huh, now it's a road trip. Then Lincoln hears over the walkie, Lincoln, this is Blake, do you copy? Lincoln picks up the walkie and says, I copy. We're about 5 miles out. Should be back soon. Blake says, alright, be careful on your way back. The roads are icy. Lincoln says, copy that. We see 2 more deadheads are up the road. Tom says, I got them. And he walks up to them and cuts both of their heads off. Tom says, well, those warheads didn't exactly hit the spot, as we see them arriving back at the ranch. They enter the ranch. Everyone walks up to the main gate, and we see Haley hugs and kisses Lincoln. They give their weapons to the guard, and Kezia says to Lincoln, gather up everybody in the farmhouse. We have some things to talk about. We see everyone gathered in the house. Lincoln, Tom, Sydney, Luke, Kezia, Haley, Blake, and the rest of the residents. And Kezia says, all right, I've called everyone here because I wanted to discuss some of the mistress things that have been going on over the past few days. Sydney says, what's going on? Kezia says, 2 days ago, Justin went on that hunt with 3 of our men. He said they'd be back that night. They never came back. And last night, Sam was on late hour watch. And this morning, Blake told me that Sam is gone and no one has seen him anywhere. And we see everyone looks very nervous when hearing this. And Kezia says, we've been living in this place for over 3 months. And it's been safe. Right up until now. Lincoln speaks up and says, you think it's them? Kezia says, it crossed my mind. Sydney says, of course it is. Tom says, now hang on, we don't have evidence to justify that yet. Sydney says, no, but what we do have is a marksman. And we are the damn target. Lincoln says, we aren't going to survive this winter if we don't have full stomachs. Everything is frozen over. And it's going to be that way for a while. And we are dangerously low on rations here. Kezia says, well, this place needs to defend itself better. Lincoln says, and that's why I'm proposing a little road trip. Kezia says, but where? We've scavenged every place for miles. And if we go further out, you know what we're risking. Lincoln says, the Vipers find us. Yes, I know. But if we don't have food, then the Vipers finding this place won't matter either way. Then someone in the crowd says, so that's it, huh? Is that your great fucking plan, Mr. West? Lincoln says, you got a better one, Jay? Jay says, you know, we left our old home because it wasn't safe. You brought us here because you promised it was a safe place to be. And now look at you. You don't know if you're coming or going. Tom says, and who the fuck said you had to say they're a big shot? Jay says, point being, I say we stay here and stay safe. Lincoln says, and starve to death and get murdered in our sleep. Yeah, that's really fucking brilliant. Kezia says, alright, both of you enough. Lincoln's right. Jay rolls his eyes and Kezia says, we gotta try. For this place, we aren't giving up. I'm taking a team out. We got a few places on the map that we can check. Tom says, there's an old shopping mall up north. It's far, but so is this trip. Far. Kezia says, okay, that's where we start. So Tom's in. Anybody else? Lincoln says, you got me. Sydney says, me too. And we see Luke raise his hand and about 5 other soldiers. And Lincoln says, we can leave Haley and Blake here, keeping this place safe until we return. Kezia says, okay, sounds good to me. We leave in an hour. And then she walks past Lincoln and taps him on the shoulder, and everyone walks out of the house. Lincoln walks up to Jay and says, you got something to say to me? Jay says, you're gonna get people killed. The people you care about are already in danger. And yet you're not doing a damn thing about it. Lincoln laughs and says, huh, okay. So how do we keep everyone safe and eat tonight? Jay doesn't answer and Lincoln says, right. Okay. Okay. So your suggestions have been denied. And if I hear you judge my leadership skills, or Kezia's for that matter again, you'll be brains out on the ground by then. Jay laughs and says, is that a threat? Lincoln laughs and says, stay out of my business and you won't have to find out. And Lincoln starts walking out of the house and Jay says, well, good fucking luck to you. Lincoln says, same goes to you. You're coming with us. Jay looks pissed and Lincoln walks out. Later that night, Lincoln, Tom, Sydney, Luke, Kezia, Jay, and about 10 other soldiers are all crammed in the RV. Lincoln is driving and there are some frozen deadheads on the road. Lincoln keeps driving around them and Tom says, this storm is gonna make this trip back home a fucking shit blizzard. Kezia says, well, good thing is it's slowing the dead down, so there is that. Sydney says, heads up! Lincoln tries to drive around a few of the other deadheads. Then the RV stops, and Lincoln says, oh, come on, not now. We then see the wheels spinning in the snow, and Lincoln says, we're stuck. And then Tom looks out of the window and says, Lincoln? And we see a herd of a few hundred deadheads coming through and heading towards the RV. Lincoln sees this and says, oh my god. Jay says in a panic, we gotta get the hell out of here. Lincoln gets out of the driver's seat and says, alright, the mall is only a few miles away from here. I know it's not easy, but there's no time to argue. The dead are gonna be here within a few minutes. We gotta flee from the RV. Kezia says, you heard him. We go now. We see them all struggling to walk through the woods. The storm is getting so bad that they can barely see where they're going. Luke says, we aren't gonna make it. Lincoln says, hey. And he points forward. And they see the mall is just up the hill. And they start walking towards it. They enter the mall. We see it's completely trashed, and Lincoln says, "All right, spread out. Search this place for anything of use." We see everyone slowly walking around. We then see Lincoln is looking at the old layout map of people that were new to the mall back when the world existed. We see on the map of the mall that there's a supermarket on the other end of the mall, and Lincoln whistles and says, "All right, there's a supermarket at the other end of this place. And by the looks of this place, this is worse than the maze. It's best to stick together." Tom says, "All right, you heard him. Let's go." Lincoln says, "The map says this way." As you see them start walking down the halls. Back at the ranch. Blake is on guard for the night, smoking a cigarette, and Haley comes up and Blake says, "Oh shit, sorry," and he puts out the smoke because of the baby, and he says, "Oh my god, sorry, I didn't know you were awake." Haley says, "I'm always awake." Blake laughs, and then he says, "I wanted to go with them, you know?" Haley says, "Yeah, me too. So why are you up here?" Blake looks worried and says, "Sam, I can't stop thinking about it." Haley taps him on the shoulder and says, "He'll come back. He will. So will the others." Blake says, "Yeah. So, how are you doing? You know, since you found out you were having a kid." Haley says, "Overwhelmed is how I feel." Blake asks, "Well, how does Lincoln feel about all this?" Haley says, "Well, he seems fine, but to be honest, I feel like he's just trying to act fine so I don't feel the weight of what we went through." Blake says, "He's a good man." Haley says, "He is." We then see a guard named Mike come up and say, "My shift, buddy, you're off." Blake says, "Thanks, Mike." We see Haley and Blake climb down the tower and part ways for the night. But then, we see someone is spying on the ranch from a distance. And as we see, it's Miles. He's spying on the ranch, and he's with 50 other Vipers, and he says to Sergeant Stephen, who is standing next to him, "Well, well, well. Most of their muscle left. And what's left will be led to slaughter." Back at the mall. Lincoln and the others are walking through the halls, and they hear something on the roof. Sydney says, "Stop. You hear that?" We see the glass roof on the top of the mall is starting to crack because of the storm, and we see that the roof looks to be giving out. Lincoln says, "All right, let's just keep moving. Come on." Lincoln and the others are slowly walking down this dark hallway, and as they turn the corner, A huge herd of the dead cut them off. Lincoln says, "Oh my God, go that way, go!" The dead are chasing after them. They try to go down the other hallway, but they get cut off there too. Before you know it, the dead are surrounding them from left and right, and we see Lincoln in a panic. "Clear the path ahead! Luke, Gord, Lucy, take out the crowd behind us till the way is clear." Luke says, "On it!" And we see Luke and a few others covering the rest of them and killing a bunch of deadheads. Meanwhile, Lincoln and the rest are killing one after another. Lincoln and the others look tired, but they keep killing, and then they clear a path, but more are on the way. Tom says, "We've only got a few seconds, let's go!" Everyone runs down the hall, and they all make it through, except for Kezia and Jay. The group runs down the hall, but more dead cut them off from the others, and we see them run the other way. As they run the other way, we see Tom say, "Come on!" Lincoln says, "Where's Kezia and Jay?" Tom looks worried, and Sydney says from far, "We gotta go!" Lincoln says, "We can't leave them." Tom says, "Brother." Lincoln says, "I'm gonna find them. Make sure everyone gets to the food." Tom says, "Lincoln." Lincoln says, "I'll be back. Stay together." As he runs back down and he's looking for Kezia and Jay, Tom looks scared for him, but he splits off and goes with the rest of the group. We then see Kezia and Jay, and they're running and they're trying to get to safety. Everywhere they go, they keep killing the dead on their way. And Jay says, "We aren't gonna make it. I told you this was a bad idea. You and Lincoln, you just wouldn't listen." Kezia grabs him by the collar and says, "Shut up! We're getting out of this." And then they see the escalator from far and they run towards it as they kill a few more of the dead on their way there. They both make it up and away from the deadheads. They are both tired and they're trying to catch their breath. As we see both of them looking over the railing. And as they look over the railing, they see truly how many dead are flooding the mall. Back with Miles. He's spying on the ranch, and then he pulls out his walkie-talkie and says, "This is Sergeant Miles. Can someone get me to the Queen? Over." Miles waits, and he hears, "Just one moment, please." And Miles says to Steven, "Get our soldiers ready. We're hitting this place tonight." Steven says, "You got it, buddy," and taps him on the shoulder, and then he gets the men ready. And then Miles hears Lindsay's voice on the walkie. "I'm here. Kind of in the middle of something. What's going on?" We see her sitting in her room, and two of her Vipers are hanging a picture, and she says, a little bit to the left. Oh, no. Down a little bit. A little higher. Perfect. We see her pick up the walkie and say, "Okay, Sergeant Miles, you've been rather useless to me lately. Hope this is good." Miles says, "Oh, it is. The place I've been looking for. I found it." Lindsay says, "Okay, so tell me, does it look dangerous?" Miles says, "Oh, not at all. Me and the guys will have the place by tonight." Lindsay says, "All right, I want this done by tonight. I'll be waiting at the railroad station when you're done. I want Mr. West's head by tonight. Sound good?" Miles says, Well, that might be a little difficult, you see. He left on a supply." Lindsay cuts him off and says, "You will bring me his head by tonight. Understood?" Miles says, "Yes, copy that." As we see Lindsay round up some fighters and she rides out of the city. Back in the mall. Kezia sees the dead all through the mall and she says, "Oh my god." Jay sees this and starts to panic. "We're done," he says. "We're as good as dead. And it's all because of him." Kezia says, "Would you shut the fuck up? All day you've done nothing other than sit there and run your fucking mouth and talk shit about me and Lincoln's leadership. But I'm willing to bet you wouldn't do half the shit he's done to get us out of here. So I'm gonna need you to get your shit together. Stop judging the man that got you where you are and start helping me and you get back to our people." Jay is freaking out and says, "This was always gonna happen." Kezia says, "What?" Jay says, "Lincoln, he brought us here to die. And the others, if they aren't dead already, they will be. But that's not happening to me." And then he takes out his gun and points it towards Kezia. Jay says, "I'm sorry. It has to be this way." Kezia says, "Jay, what the hell are you doing?" Jay says, "Lincoln took this risk. What he didn't realize is the things that he was risking by coming out here. And you all were too much in denial that you didn't see what I saw the entire time. So this is how I'm gonna keep the rest of those people safe." Kezia looks confused and Jay says, "I'm sorry." He shoots her in the leg and she falls to the floor. He takes her bow off of her and throws it to the floor. And she slowly is trying to get up and fight back. But once she gets up, he pushes her off the railing and into the crowd of the dead. Jay watches her fall to her death and he looks horrified at what he just did. And then he sees Lincoln coming up another escalator and Lincoln says, "Hey, where is she?" Jay points the gun towards Lincoln and says, "You did this. It was you!" Lincoln sees Kezia's bow on the floor behind him and he says, "What did you do?" Jay says, "I'm doing what you can't do for those people. It was you that got us here. You! And you can let your people die. But not me. So this is how it has to be." He pulls the trigger, and the gun is empty. Lincoln slaps the gun out of his hands and starts punching him over and over again. Jay then headbutts Lincoln and Lincoln falls back. Lincoln is on the floor and Jay is standing over him, ready to kill him. And then you see Lincoln pulls out a knife and stabs him in the belly. Lincoln gets up and looks at him with no mercy, and Jay says, "You gonna finish me?" Lincoln says, "Yeah, it looks like you will find out what I do to you after all." And he pulls out the knife, and then Jay falls to the ground. Lincoln pulls out his gun and shoots him in the head and ends his life. He then picks up Kezia's bow and looks down at the dead and says, "Oh my God." And we hear someone screaming, and Lincoln looks terrified for Kezia. Outside of the ranch. It's the middle of the night, and Blake is aimlessly walking in the woods outside of the ranch. He hears branches snapping, and he says, "Hey, I know there's someone following me. I don't want any trouble. I'm just looking for my friends." Someone comes up behind Blake, and Blake turns around. It's just Haley. Blake says, "Oh my God, you scared me. Haley says, I saw you sneak out. What the hell are you doing? Blake says, I can't. I can't just sit in there. I have to find Sam. Haley says, look, I'm scared too, but we shouldn't be out here. Blake says, no, you don't get it. When the world fell apart, me and my family tried to escape the city. But me and my family were in a horrible car accident. My wife and my little girl, they were suffering, and I couldn't do anything but sit there and watch them die. But when my family was gone, they turned. That's the first ever reanimated I've seen. My own family. And sitting in that crashed car on the side of the road, I thought that the best end is to die with my family. And that is what I was going to do. But Sam and Kezia, they found me. They were on their way to the military base, because the military base said that they were setting up somewhere safe. And Sam and Kezia, they put down my family. And they turned me into who I am today. And Haley looks in shock of all of this. And Blake says, so I owe that man my life. Because I wouldn't be standing here right now if it wasn't for him. It's okay. Go back. I'll be back once I find him. Haley says, you're not doing this alone. I'm gonna help you. And she hugs Blake and says, let's bring him home. And they keep walking and looking for Sam. Some time has passed by. They are walking, and Blake says, I don't know how this ends. I really don't. Haley says, we have a community, a place to protect. No matter what we're gonna have to do, we are not losing our home again. Never again. And then they see blood on a tree. Blake looks at it and says, the blood's still wet. This just happened. They keep walking, and then they see blood dripping from the tree. As they look up, they see 5 dead bodies that have been skinned alive and are hanging off the trees. Blake looks at the 5th one and sees a watch still on his arm. And Blake says, Sam? Haley looks horrified, and then she realizes that all of the people that have gone missing have been killed. Haley looks angry, and then she sees written on the tree in blood, you shouldn't have run.
Give me your heart and I'll show you how to feel. Send me your soul.
And when she sees that written on the tree, she knows it's the Vipers. And she looks back at Blake and she says, they're back.
One that's true and bold, The only thing that could hurt us is the curse of the